Feeling energized, I hope? If not, then you will in a few minutes, because I'll do my best to make sure that you're feeling animated, because this is the most exciting panel of the day. Yes, yes. Okay, so I have a really interesting group of panelists, but as I was preparing for this session, I was thinking like, oh, how do I make the proper introduction, you know, that people haven't heard before. You've probably heard it before, but let's think of AI as the highway, right? The highway, the new sort of access route. And the question is not about how fast you can travel on the highway, but it is who has access to the highway and is it safe to drive on it? So these are like existential questions we can be asking ourselves this afternoon. Because AI, if you consider this as a public good infrastructure, it can make a lot of difference in people's lives, as you will see. And in Morocco, as part of Africa, the opportunities could be endless. 60% of the world's, of Africa's population is under the age of 25. But if you think about it, only 6% of Africa has access to 5G. So we have a long way to go, but also plenty of opportunity. And this is what I hope that you will take away from the panel this afternoon. So I will start immediately by inviting my fellow panelists up on the stage to participate in 3 rounds of questions. And as I call their names, they can walk up. We have Dr. Cornelia Walther, who is a thought leader, bridging humanity and technology. And then we have Professor Aawatif Hayar, former Minister of Solidarity, Social Integration, talking about social AI and human-centric smart systems. Dr. Loubna Bouarfa, machine learning scientist from the University of Oxford, Cambridge. Oh my gosh, get it right, Marielle. Speaking on the future of work and truth infrastructure. And Professor Amine Bensaid, President of AlAkhawayn University. And Dr. Vida Hamad, representing META, Head of Public Policy in MENA for META, talking about AI tools and access for social good. Now, just in case you're wondering how this is going to be structured, we will have 3 rounds of questions. Our panelists are going to be asked to keep their responses to about 3 to 4 minutes. There will be slides, but they are needed. So bear with us on this. So let's launch straight into this. Our opening round, the North Star. Before we talk about jobs and opportunities, which is the topic of the panel today, AI for social good and inclusive job creation, we ask, what is the long-term vision for AI in Morocco and Africa so that prosperity is broad-based and human-centered? Cornelia, what does pro-social AI look like in practice, and how can double literacy and hybrid intelligence protect human agency as AI mainstreams? And before you answer, do you want your slides? Can we put the slides up for speaker 1? And here we have, I don't know, you can't see it on there, but it's behind you. Your first slide. Are you okay? All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So this, in a snapshot, is what we could move to in terms of a hybrid future with AI. Social change is the cause and consequence of individual change. And can we keep the slides? Yes. And artificial intelligence is the consequence of natural intelligence. What's going to happen next will determine whether it becomes its consequence. So linking this to the topics of this morning with regulation, ethics, and governance, this is where our decisions will matter. Next slide. We're currently navigating a very dangerous transition where 4 tipping points are connecting and mutually propelling each other, with agency decay at the individual level, where it's becoming ever easier to delegate the most small cognitive effort. that's not a good thing, because our brains and all of us in this room, we had the luxury of growing up in a time and age where our brains had to evolve against friction. And the brain is a muscle, let's face it, use it or lose it. You grow up, you don't have to push your boundaries, they're weakening. What kind of context do we leave the next generation? At the meso level, the race towards AI mainstreaming, with institutions adopting AI just to be part of it, without really being aware of the implications of making themselves ever more dependent on those new tools. At the macro level, the race towards AI supremacy. At the corporate level, at the governmental level, we want it at all price, but we don't know how we control it when we have it, what it's going to be used for. And finally, at the meta level, we're currently crossing one planetary boundary after the other. 7 out of 9 have now been crossed, with irreversible consequences for the environment that, at the end of the day, we all depend on. So, 4 tipping points that are currently moving not in favor of humanity. And our decisions now, as the last analog generation, will determine where it goes, because there is an alternative. Last slide. AI, at the end of the day, is neutral. It's a tool to an end, and that end must be determined by the human user, which means we have the choice of AI systems that are tailored, trained, tested, and targeted to bring out the best in and for people and planet. Pro-social AI. Next. That, however, requires human agency, the ability and volition to make choices and the perception thereof. That, in a hybrid age, requires hybrid intelligence. Next. And hybrid intelligence, the complementarity of NI and AI, so HI requires double literacy. Next. Which is not only AI literacy, which is currently the name of many education systems, but it goes beyond, because it requires human literacy, a holistic understanding of self and society, people and planet, and algorithmic literacy, not just prompt engineering and what's the latest tool and how to use it, but also what are the risks and limitations, and what is the influence of AI on our NI, on our ability to make autonomous choices. So, all of it, to summarize in a very easy way, our human decisions today will determine whether a future with AI will be in favor of the human species and sustainable for the planet or not. And if that won't happen, and if you have doubts, you are not alone, then that will not be the fault of the technology, but it will be because of those who design, deliver, and deploy it.
Thank you very much, Cornelia. On that happy note, as we sit here, plotting the future, I'm going to move on to Madame the Minister. How does social AI ensure humans and not systems remain at the center of national digital transformation? This very much links to what Cornelia was talking about, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit about your thinking on this topic. And can I bring up the slides for speaker number 2?
Yes, the first slide, please. Yes. So we all agree that artificial intelligence is a great and powerful tool for as driver of progress, and it helps us to improve our infrastructures. If I can have the slide, our infrastructures are.
Oh,
And our it helps us also to improve our industries, our daily life, and also it is a tool for improving or augmenting human intelligence, and for sure it will create a lot of opportunities in terms of social and economic developments. However, embracing this innovation should not skip from our vision the risk of AI. And we have talked this morning about part of this risk. First is the energy consumption, which is a very huge. We are talking now about tens or 30 times more energy consumption than what we have with the current data centers. We have also data privacy, and this morning we talked about that, and we have now everywhere digital devices that are listening to us, they are taking photo, video of us, and where this data is going, and this is a serious issue. And also manipulation of opinions, because if you don't have enough data, you have a bias. So the decisions that are taken are a biased decision, and this will manipulate the opinion, not in the good way. And also we have a problem with social bonds. Now, when we need to know something or to ask for something, we ask LLMs and AI solution, and this will create isolated people and break the social bonds. And sovereignty is a serious issue. We have talked also this morning about sovereignty and how data needs to stay in a country, and also job losses. With automation, we will have a serious also issue with the job loss. So there are a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of risks. So I think we should think not about designing the most intelligent or smart or efficient artificial intelligence, but design the artificial intelligence that is serving humanity. Because at the end of the day, we are talking about humanity, and we want to improve the daily life of humanity. We don't want to design a city or a country for robots. We want to design it for humans. So we should focus on that, and this is why, please, the second slide. We pushed for a new direction, which is on frugal AI, which means that AI needs to put it's a human-centered approach that is performing for improving the daily life of humans, and for example, how we can design AI to accelerate the achievement of sustainable development goals, for example, how to eradicate poverty, improve gender equality, decrease the carbon footprint, etc. So this should be our target, and not only the economic, which is also economic, but it's like ethical approach for the AI in economy, and also how we can use AI to create the well-being of humanity, and develop solutions that are aligned with our culture, with our beliefs, and not far from our culture. And also, I want to the impact on the environment. I already talked about that. So this frugal approach is not less AI; it's better AI. It's a better AI. How we can design AI which is serving humanity, and we see it as a better AI.
Thank you so much. I'm just sitting here reflecting on, like, don't you think that we need to look at, like, the scaffolding of our minds? Like, we need to look at how we ourselves are thinking and structured. It's not only AI outside, but it's in relationship with AI that we need to consider what are the frames that we are living by. Sorry to butt in. Loubna, it's over to you. So the question that, that we have for you is, and it's a little bit more optimistic, if AI is already doing smart work, how must we rethink the human role in the future economy?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here. So I think every era had a different characteristic. So we've been through this multiple times. Through farming, through the industrial revolutions, we saw a change of what the role of the human and what the role of the new technologies. We also saw the change of what wealth means. So in the farming era, it was how much land, how much human resources you have to do the farming. In the industrial revolutions, we built machinery that basically duplicated the muscles, so we can, with new machinery, move heavier things, do heavier work. In the digital revolution, we saw the knowledge become the wealth, and we saw the human role move to analysts and to producing this knowledge. And now we are in a very delicate and different age, the age where we are scaling intelligence in its different forms. So, and that is pretty amazing. From what we saw with language only already blow the mind of the world with LLMs, we thought, okay, that is just one aspect of it. There are multiple levels of intelligence that still not completely scaled, and it's still gonna come, from cognitive intelligence to immune intelligence. For example, there are startups in Cambridge that are using the antibodies from patients that survive diseases they're supposed to be dead to basically develop new treatments. Same in agriculture. In multiple aspects of nature intelligence, we will see more and more models trained and scaling this intelligence to the world. So when we get there, what will be the role of the human and what will be the role of the machine? So we are now, unfortunately, seeing very interesting phenomena. We're seeing AI doing the thinking, the logistics, and humans doing the mundane tasks, like with the gig economy, with the Deliveroo's of the world, the Ubers, and you touched on this, on sovereignty, which is very, very interesting. And we should not repeat the same mistakes the internet created. So when the internet first came, it was only open for universities. And it was a trustworthy place, trustworthy marketplace. You can buy things, sell things, because it's only open among academics and students. In '95, when the internet opened to the world, the amount of scams, the amount of hallucinations, the amount of bad practices scaled dramatically. Then we couldn't solve it. As states, as social societies, we created the big tech companies that came to regulate the marketplace, the eBays of the world, the Amazons of the world, and we gave them all our sovereignty away. So, big part of it, from justice to logistics and we should learn from that. We are in that particular era right now that we, as leaders, can define the course of this technology. Are we again creating something that is going to give so much of sovereignty away to Silicon Valley or maybe China or other places in the world and give the nice jobs and nice thinking to robots and make our citizens do the mundane works, the deliveries, and the driving without thinking? Or as leaders, we say, hold on, we can make that decision. We can define what our citizens do for jobs and what robots and machines do for jobs. And that is the inflection point where I believe we are in. So there are few things that are going to change. First of all, companies will be generating revenue. Big part of it comes from robots, from machines, from AI, and some of it from humans. Now we are taxing labor, which means that taxation will need to change to generate revenue for the state. So we need to change our taxation system because the human role, it's no longer linked to executing tasks, long hours, and we need to define that role of the human, which need to be linked to the moral aspects, the ethical aspects, to the creativity, to the strategic aspects. And the big change that's going to come with this, which is one we'll touch on later, is a big change from an economy perspective that we are moving from volume-based models to outcome-based models. Because now, finally, we have a technology that can predict outcomes. So it's no longer about how much goods we sell. It's about the outcome delivered. In healthcare, where my previous startup, we were working on how can we move from paying for the pill to paying for the patient gets better. And this will be the new model of economy that will trigger the changes across all of it. But all of it is about leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we've heard from Cornelia, who is ringing the warning bell a little bit, but still offering a pathway forward. We have Aawatif, who's saying, like, you know, frugal AI, we need to think about that. Then we have the new roles of the humans. And if we look at the professor, Amine, you have a huge responsibility because you're right in there with the university students. What on earth sort of world are they expecting out there? And how are you preparing them for the world that is today, but also for the future? Would you like your slides? Slides, please. Speaker 4.
Thank you very much, Cornelia. First of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm really delighted to be part of this panel. It just sounds like you guys are, or you ladies are experts in what we try to learn every day. I only have one regret, is I'm spoiling the all-women panel. This panel deserves to be all women. So the question was about responsibilities of universities, and please don't look at the slide, I'll come back to it later. I'd like to make one point about responsibility in general, and then take an example of what we're trying to do to Cornelia's question. I believe the first responsibility of universities today is to decide existentially how the university will become in the age of AI, or how it will disappear in the age of AI. A couple of years ago, the numbers were that there were about 200 million students in the world paying for their higher education one way or the other. And the forecast is 280 million by 2030. So there is a lot of money out there in the sector of higher education. And there's a lot of money pouring into the sector of higher education. And it will be happening mostly in Africa and in Asia. So if you are going to go in 5 years from 200 million to 280 million, and you have so much opportunity for income, how are you going to do education? Either you will have one curriculum and one way of doing things and you standardize it, or you have some way of doing mass customization. Well, AI brings mass customization. So you will find today in the Silicon Valley and elsewhere, entrepreneurs and deep pocket companies who are trying to reinvent the new way of doing higher education, which does not necessarily go through universities. About 2 weeks ago, the organism that does accreditation of AlAkhawayn University, it's arguably the most prestigious accreditation body in the US, the New England Commission for Higher Education. 2 weeks ago, they came out with a policy for accrediting entities that deliver education without delivering a degree. So there are things happening, and they seem to be, the pace seems to be getting higher and higher. So that's one, I believe, one responsibility of universities. A second responsibility, which may be somewhat related, is to be purposeful. What do we want to do with AI? How do we want to use AI? But to do that, you need to know where you're going. Many universities don't necessarily know where they're going. I've been telling this to my children graduating of high school, and I tell it to students at the university. Are you coming to the university only because everybody else at the age of 17 or 18 goes to college? Or do you have some goal? Same thing applies to universities. Do we only dispense classes because every university dispenses classes? Or are we doing it for some reason? What is that reason? And it doesn't have to be the same reason for every university. And then once we know, we have to ask ourselves, how do we want to use AI to do it better or faster or whatever? The third thing that I believe is a responsibility of universities is to make sure that while they're thinking about their existential model, and while they're thinking about how to use AI to go what added value they want to bring, is to make sure that they are serving employability. Because if in the meantime, we do not guarantee jobs to these young people, then we will not have a chance to think of what to do with AI. They will do it anyway, because their jobs will depend on it. So, having said this, now, do we have a pointer?
We don't have a pointer.
Don't have a pointer.
I can go and point. What would you like?
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, so let me maybe back up a little bit. About 6 years ago, AlAkhawayn University had to decide with its board, what do we want the next 5 years to be? After having earned the American accreditation, and AUI has always had, AUI is AlAkhawayn University in Ifrane. AUI has always had the mission of experimenting with American model of higher education in Morocco, following the liberal arts tradition. And so after getting accreditation, it was like AUI had delivered on its mission. So the question was, what do we do now? And the decision was that from the board, from AUI's board, was, can you use whatever you have learned through this accreditation for something that is very relevant for Morocco? You have been designed to be a living lab, so choose something that you will be a living lab on that is likely to be a priority for Morocco. And so to make a long story short, the question was, do we remain liberal arts or not? Liberal arts model says, you are human-centered, student-centered, relationship-based, and you are working on habits of mind and how to think before thinking about skills. So the question was, do we want to remain on this while employers are asking for hard skills, technical skills, or do we want to do something else? So again, long story short, we decided that liberal arts education brings agility, resilience, and adaptiveness. And so even if we had not been on this model, we should go to this model. But the employability issue does not disappear, especially with the challenge in Morocco of unemployment of young people. So we decided to, unlike US universities, we decided to reinforce the liberal arts model and augment it with career success. And when we decided this, the professors said, well, these young people that you want to work with for a changing world, they themselves have been changing in the last few years. Things that we used to do as professors no longer work as well. So that's when we went back and we discovered Gen Z, and we discovered characteristics of Gen Z, and we discovered that well-being is an issue for Gen Z. And as a result, we decided that we are going to work on student success with career success and on flourishing or well-being we've been trying to work on this for the last 5 or 6 years. For student success, we went from 4% of our students who used to get job offers before graduation to 50%, 73%, 84%, and this year 88% of those who get offers before graduation. For flourishing and well-being, we have not done much because because this was passed by the board in February 2020. In March 2020, COVID hit. And we were no longer trying to work on flourishing, we were trying to work on well-being on campus. The number of students who were asking for psychological counseling tripled, and we had a waiting list of 5 to 6 weeks.
Thank you. This is, oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So quickly, so maybe because time is up. So about purposefulness, our question has now become, how do we use AI in order to do better student success, in order to do better flourishing and well-being, and can we scale this up? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which brings us to META and Vida. It's difficult to follow this long line, but the question for you is what core principle should guide global tech partnerships that serve Morocco's long-term prosperity? And I'm also interested to see, how the element of critical thinking and human agency comes into this. Thank you.
Thank you. If I were to think of just one core principle that anchors and opens up partnerships, that would be the principle of openness. And in openness, I don't just mean openness of mind, I mean open data sets and open code. Why openness? Because openness is changing what equitable and scalable solutions look like. Openness also means that the government does not need to buy the technology, it can create it. So in a sense, openness is not just free access, it is also free capacity or joining capacities. And I'll give an example about that. By opening up our models and our codes, first of all, they can be audited, they can be fine-tuned, as was mentioned earlier this morning. They can be refined by people who are using the model. Second thing is, and as a concrete example of how open models have been creating an ecosystem in Morocco instead of making Morocco dependent on a technology, is, for example, in the education sector. I can give examples of how Meta's open AI models have allowed for institutions to work on their vision and enhance their services. For example, in the education sector, and we're talking about, especially if you think about in rural areas and schools with limited capacities, our open AI model Llama was used by researchers from Hassan II University to come up with customized middle school student lessons, specifically for French classrooms, for tailored material that is tailored for them. And hence, as a result of that, the students get support through tailored material, especially if schools are resource limited, by using the Llama AI model. A second example would be in water sustainability. And this is an example from the UNFPA University, whereby researchers used another model. It's called Segment Anything. Segment Anything, the project I think was called Aquascore, and it uses satellite imagery in order to automatically score the availability of water in certain mountain and rural areas. And by doing that, they are able to immediately spot water scarcity. Where is the water scarcity? A third example, and this is the last example I'm going to give, I have so many others specifically from Morocco and the region. The third example is in crisis response. So for example, when I think there was an earthquake in 2023 in Al Hawz, and the World Bank used a specific data set called business trends. And by using these data sets, they were able to identify what businesses were affected, in what sectors, and where. The result is, of course, you know, when there's a crisis, resources or recovery resources tend to be limited. So then you know how to have targeted initiatives for recovery of the business sector. So these are just 3 examples that I mentioned of how solutions can, openness can help us together co-create solutions that can be used at scale and that can be developed in country for the country's specific needs.
Thank you, Vida. The pictures that I'm getting is like openness, collaboration, deeper understanding of self in relation to technology, and also understanding beyond the self, your relationship, your responsibility to others in using this technology. Sorry, I'm like, my head is spinning a little bit because these are big ideas, and you know, I find myself nodding as if, you know, it's easy to understand whatever, but if you go a little bit deeper, you understand how much more we need to think clearly in order to make this new infrastructure, this architecture work, because the work has to begin with ourselves. It keeps coming back to that. How are we shaping our minds in a critical fashion to deal with the technology that is coming, that requires quality data sets, clear data, in order to deliver for good, for the good of humanity? Cornelia, next round. All right. I'll try not to steal your time. So this question is about society work and accountability. How is AI shaping society, and what do we and how do we measure real impact? So, Cornelia, you said before we are the last pre-AI generation. I think you said analog generation. What's at stake if we fail to build in agency in what we're doing now?
Well, I think the fact that we are this last free generative AI generation means that our decisions today will shape the algorithmic architecture of the future. That sounds very big, but at the same time, it's very concrete and very practical. What's happening today is the consequence of yesterday, including the regulations that were put in place yesterday. So there's no magic to that. But linking this back to the panel just before lunch, a lot of the direct and indirect consequences of the regulations that are in place are affecting those who are not benefiting from the outcomes, but who are suffering the consequences. And when it comes to AI, and in particular generative AI, then the consequences are amplified, not only in the present, but also in the future and from one generation to the next. Because what we are still having in terms of the comparison, the before generative AI and the after and with generative AI, the next generation won't have that. They will grow up with ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, and others on their fingertips. Like the generation that is growing up now has been used to social media from the very beginning. They have not experienced a childhood without Facebook, TikTok, and others. Now, I would argue that the elderly of us who have known a world without that have a huge luxury that also gives them a very big responsibility to make the best out of that asset, of knowing what a world without generative AI means and entails.
I'm going to switch it up because I think, Loubna, you talk a lot about the truth and the truth, how to build truth infrastructure. And I think it links directly to what Cornelia is worried about. So I think that I'll give you the opportunity to answer, how do we build truth infrastructure that people can trust amid all these deep fakes and intelligent deception and the agency decay that is happening already?
Thank you. And yes, indeed. So I think we are facing a problem that actually we saw history repeating itself over and over. And AI now as a tool that creates images, text, and content, we can see now an exponential increase in hallucinations and facts being distorted. But it's not only AI, it also comes from when once fact leaves its source, once it moves from one human to another, it actually start losing some elements. And we saw once in many domains, when we face duplications, when we face mutation, we use one technology. We see it in forensics. We use for identity duplication fingerprints, like human fingerprints. We can use that as technology. We used it early also in multimedia. So my early task in AI in 2006-07 was about video fingerprinting. So Shazam, if you've heard about the app that can recognize audio and it identifies, yes. So I worked on that technology, I almost 20 years ago on video using the Philips multimedia algorithm, and it's now standard method used in YouTube. So now my new startup, Servox AI, we're working on a system called Fact Trace that fingerprints meaning. For every fact, we extract a unique fingerprint. Even if you say it differently, it results in the same fingerprint. But if you twist facts, you change causation, you add negation, even if you use the same words, it results in a different fingerprint. So in this technology, we filed the patent this year, built in the heart of Cambridge University, and we are now talking to a leading government to pilot this technology to be able to trace facts from the source and measure mutations. And as you can imagine, if we scale this technology, it will be very hard to not trace back where these mutations come from. And as I said before, because this is so important, because we are exactly in the momentum where the internet was in 1995. It's now we see with LLMs the scale of its use, and that is just language. Imagine when we start also launching different types of intelligence across domains like agriculture, across the public sector, across the different highly regulated sectors. We cannot afford to have different versions of truth. We cannot run an organization, an institution with different types of truths. We may afford it in daily life, but not when we run an organization. And that is why this is so important for us, that we start creating this truth infrastructure. Just when the cars arrived, we had to build the infrastructure, the roads, the tunnels. We start building the traffic system. And now we are in that phase where we need this infrastructure to be able to scale this technology in a responsible fashion.
Thanks. And just leaning into what you were saying about infrastructure, I wanted to ask Vida, when we speak about AI for social good, how do we know it's working? What sort of results or indicators should Morocco be tracking to see that it actually has impact, a good impact? And then after you have spoken, I'll come back to our two other panelists here, but I wanted to keep the thread going.
Thank you. That's a very important question. So measuring impact is something that is very important, especially when you are doing sustainability and sustainable development work. And take it a step backward. What do we need in order to be able to measure impact? I think we need to have, from the very beginning, evidence-based planning. And for evidence-based planning, you know, the million-dollar question usually in sustainable development, and I'm sure that Morocco is facing this right now, is what sector do we focus on? Where do we start? Health, education, water? There's a need across the board, right? So and you can give answers based on, I don't know, maybe I'm driving on the road and I say, oh, this is such a bad, like we should start with infrastructure. My kids need help in the hospital. No, we should start with health. But to be able to really measure impact, we need to start by evidence, and we need to get this evidence. Now, how do we get this evidence for sustainable development planning? Again, going back to the tools that are made available by the technology, there are two sets of tools. One set of tools, and governments here can use both tools, either internally for their own processes, to make their own processes efficient, to cut down administrative work, to streamline workflows, collaborate across ministries. And the second one is to actually deliver services to citizens. So these tools apply for both use cases. One of these tools is, of course, the OpenAI tools which you can use. You can build on them for your specific needs in your specific language. And we've been talking about Llama since the morning. Llama is a typical example. Another thing that helps us gain the necessary evidence is data sets. And here, maybe not a lot of people know that Meta does have more than 200 data sets publicly available. I'll give a few examples on these. The Relative Wealth Index. It's a good indicator for poverty and poverty levels. That's one of them. Another one is electricity grid maps. That's a good way to understand where the energy, how the energy is distributed, and perhaps where interventions are needed. And another one I would say is the population density maps, which is used heavily also in crisis. I always give an example of the Beirut blast, whereby, for example, if you have a blast or you have influxes of migration, you are able to tell which areas are heavily populated again so that you can have targeted interventions. So once you have this kind of evidence, you built for this kind of evidence from the very beginning, you can use it at the design phase to design interventions, but you can also use these data sets to see whether you have targeted or the poverty pockets have been reduced, whether the electricity is now more accessible in other regions, so you can use them. You can use this evidence both at the beginning of the project when you're designing it or later on for impact assessment.
Thanks a lot. I'm just sitting here reflecting on data, evidence, efficiency. I'm very happy I work for a population and data agency right now because it's like, yes, finally, relevant again. But it also reminds me of the challenges that we have in our daily work to encourage this embracing of data and efficiency thinking and better planning, et cetera, and not everyone is that engaged. So my question to the minister is, like, how do we maintain social cohesion? How do we move forward together in a time of AI?
Yes, thank you for this question. Very important. So we are entering a new era. Where AI is it's not only a tool or a digital tool, it's a driver for societal transformation. And I talked about Frugal AI and how Frugal AI focuses on local needs. For instance, for example, we talk here in Morocco about, we have a lot of challenges in terms of social challenges, in terms of education, health, and so how AI can answer these challenges or address these challenges. For example, I will give a concrete examples how AI can improve or contribute to solve problems of Morocco. For example, for education, everybody is talking about problems of education. We don't have enough teachers, etc. But imagine that from the primary school, you have an AI agent which is following a kid and following students. So this AI agent will detect the troubles, the learning troubles of this kid, and will recommend learning process, learning solution. And we have a person, a virtual person, taking a hand of these kids that is coming from rural area. These kids, he doesn't or she don't have any soft skills or any, the environment around is not sophisticated enough or advanced enough to help these kids to succeed in his education. But this virtual agent will help him, will assist him, and this will cost almost nothing for the country. It's not like if you have teachers, it's a lot of money. This is a very frugal approach to achieve better results in education, for example. If I take the same thing and by the way, I was, when I was at the university, Hassan Singh, I tried to implement this for the first year students in the university, because you have 50% drop in the university in the first year in open access. And I didn't finish this process, but I was starting at that time in 2019 to develop AI and digital solutions that can detect learning problems of students and prevent drop before it happens. And instead of having 50% of drop, we will have maybe 10 or 5. This is amazing. I tried this also when I was at the Ministry of for Solidarity. We were dealing with vulnerable population, with women from rural area, from mountains. So just by connecting or opening the platforms, these women were able to access to the platforms and learn from they had the courses in soft skills, in professional skills. So again, if we collect data, again, I didn't have time to finish it, but if you collect data about these vulnerable women, you can help them to learn more, to start a project, and to implement a project only using virtual agents, virtual AI agents. So this is amazing. I can finish with example from University Mohammed VI Polytechnic, where we have succeeded last 6 months to create a digital twin of a part of the campus. And it's monitored by an AI agent. And now we created this digital twin, and now the AI agent is working to optimize energy. Imagine the target is 30% more or decrease of the energy. It will help to optimize water consumption or water management, also detection of intrusion, detection of fire. It's only using AI agent. So once you did this digital transformation, creating this digital twin, you can create different AI agents that will help you. It has a cost at the beginning, but the final cost is not too expensive compared to the result that we can gain. And I will finish by a frugal approach in the sense that we need to develop a local competencies, capacity building in AI here in Morocco. And this is what we are working on at UM6P University, with also universities like Hassan II, Hassan I, Rabat, etc. There is a consortium of universities working on, is to create a task force in AI that can first accompany their own universities to improve the operation of the university, the learning of students, but not only. We can collaborate with ministries like Ministry of Interior, Ministry of other ministries, so that we can prepare, we can develop digital twin of the territory. For example, we will host the FIFA World Cup in 2030. So we will have millions of fans traveling from different cities, but with AI, we can use this smart mobility in order to connect this mobility system with the territory. So you can promote the territory. You can say, oh, you are moving from here in the tramway, but there is a restaurant with a good tagine, and there is a place where you can buy things. This is connected by AI. So it's a huge perspective of jobs, of creating added value in the economy. But again, and I join what Loubna said, it's the momentum now.
I agree. The momentum is now. And actually, I'm going to go jump a question, go back to the Professor Bensaid. Amine, what is the first change that Morocco should, well, in terms of the curriculum, what recommendation would you have in order to adapt the curriculum in Morocco to the future of, to the AI future that we're living in already? What reform would you be recommending or hoping for in order to get people up to speed faster and to, to make people more comfortable with the change that they're experiencing?
Yeah, thank you, Marielle. It would be contentious of me to, honestly, to say what Morocco should do in terms of curriculum, because I have not looked at the equation of the K to 12 and all of that. But what I can do is I can share with you a modest example of an analysis and choices that we have made. And AUI has always been meant to be somewhat of a pilot or a living lab, so hopefully some of these things may be transferable. We have made a decision at a high level, again, that is consistent with our purpose, with what we try to do. And that decision was that we were going to make all the changes by investing in the professors. The assumption is that if I take a professor who is an expert in a discipline and I equip them and empower them with AI, then they will find the best way of reaching the learning outcomes using AI, improving how you get to the learning outcomes using AI. So what we have been doing is, since spring 2023, we've been having, on average, 1 to 2 workshops of the use of AI in pedagogy. And we have about 73% of our faculty who have embarked in that. The assumption there is that if we are going to have something that is sustainable, we want to make sure that the professors are on board and that they are equipped. So if we go with this assumption, then our suggestion would be put professors at the center and make sure they're equipped. The second thing is to, which we have started this year. So after 2.5 years of training professors, this year we have deployed AI in every course. So every professor has chosen one way of introducing AI in their course, whether it is in engineering or in business or in philosophy or in history or in sociology. The idea being that everybody gets used to the fact that AI is a tool. Okay, so they're using it as a tool, but to get to the objectives, to the academic, pedagogical objectives that they had, the educational objectives. The third thing is that students, for the sake of their skills and employability, need to have AI skills, not just use AI as a tool to get to something, but have the skills themselves, because those skills are required. So for that, we have introduced what we called AI across the curriculum. So what that means is that for every major, they know the skills and the outcome that the student should have, and they make sure that at the university level, we have the learning outcomes by course, whereby we know before graduation they will have the AI skills. The third thing that I believe is important for everybody, but certainly for us, is to make sure that you give the fundamentals, that you give the multidisciplinary knowledge, that you give the knowledge of, as we've heard earlier, about identity, self-knowledge, knowing the other, interacting with them, and so on and so forth. And I would say maybe the meta-knowledge. I would call this maybe the meta-knowledge. The fourth thing that we have done, and which I believe is important for both employability and for the learning with AI, is experiential learning. We have heard it this morning. So what we have done is we have done co-op programs, so formation par alternance, for about 4 years now. So we have about 20 partners that we do the formation par alternance with. The idea being that the student actually gets to graduate with a diploma, with knowledge, and with experience. The last thing I will say is that with AI, so we believe there's no choice but to include AI, maybe in the way that we have said. But the other thing that I feel is extremely important and that we have adopted is to make sure that we embed human interaction in every use of AI, which means that either it's a group project, so there are teams to make, the professor designs to make sure that the project cannot all be done by AI, that there are components where the student has to interact with the other students, and where it is that the professor interjects. The reason is, you were talking about well-being earlier and flourishing and so on. There is reason to believe that AI in the back office, before generative AI, that AI, and I'm sorry, I am an AI scientist, but AI in social media has caused challenges to well-being, to mental health. In all likelihood, there are studies of about 11 million Gen Zers that show this kind of thing. And as a result, it's extremely important to make sure that the human connectedness, and there is now, after generative AI, there are some articles without conclusive evidence that show that generative AI is pushing to less human connection and slowly but surely into depression. Less time with humans, more time with the machine, and depression. And there is no reason that we cannot do AI with the human connection, which, as I said, I'm extremely happy to be part of this panel because we have been hearing this time and again.
Yeah, it's true. Jonathan Haidt, professor based out of the US, he's written a book called The Anxious Generation. And then it's a worldwide movement now, basically trying to get mobile phones out of schools and get, young kids off screens before they reach a certain age, because there's research that shows that it impairs their sort of cognitive development and in socio-emotional learning, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, balance is good, and human connection is imperative for our well-being. And this brings us to the third and final round. I'm going to start with Cornelia. If you could gently suggest a direction that Morocco could explore, double literacy, or a pro-social AI hub, or a pro-social AI index. I mean, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? What would you suggest are the first baby steps that Morocco could take or could look at more closely to ensure human well-being in the AI era?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there are 4 steps, but I will be brief for each of them because they step in complementarity and they operate at the micro, meso, macro, and meta level. So at the micro level, if we really think about the human being that needs to design, deliver, and deploy those technologies of the future, double literacy, clearly combining human literacy, holistic understanding of self and society, people and planet, and algorithmic literacy. What is AI? How does it work and why? What are the risks and limitations? What are the opportunities and obligations? Which goes far beyond the current approach that most organizations have for digital literacy, which is important, but it's only 49% of the equation. At the meso level, at the institutional, setting up pro-social AI hubs. So places like the event that we had today, where we had speakers and participants from the private sector, the public sector, civil society, academia. In addition, one could now bring in people from communities to really talk about consultations and locally guided regulations. At the macro level, a pro-social AI index, a sort of national and regional standard to assess AI systems based on the 4 T's of pro-social AI. Is it tailored, trained, tested, and targeted to bring out the best in and for people and planet? And finally, thinking not only about what's happening now, but also where we want this now to lead us toward. So building regenerative intent into the algorithmic architecture of the future. None of these stand in isolation, But these 4 steps taken together could take us a big stretch into the direction where everybody has a fair chance to fulfill their potential with planetary dignity.
No, it's you want to now or me to because I can go in the next.
For the benefit of the audience here, the question that I wanted to ask is for Loubna. How do we build? Sorry, I skipped my page here. I got too excited. How do we prevent a gig economy underclass as automation accelerates?
Thank you. I think this touches on a few points that we actually heard, both Amine and Cornelia mentioned. It's with these algorithms, with AI, they optimize for the ground truth, what they are trained to do. And the problems we have with the anxious generation, we have exactly the same discussions in Cambridge and both in Oxford about this Gen Z, especially post-pandemic, as well as what you mentioned, Cornelia. These algorithms optimize on the outcomes they trained off. If they train to sell more ads, they will do everything. Just like we humans, if we want to win a football match, we do everything to win. We still have some rules, but we do everything to win. Therefore, these algorithms, they can lie, they can cheat, they can steal data, they do everything to win. And they find even strategies we as humans didn't think of before. So this is also with the gig economy. When the business models behind the gig economy is about driving revenue, they will give humans jobs that we're not supposed to do, and they will optimize to drive that revenue. That's why I mentioned that what we need next is to move to outcome-based models, not only because it's better for humans and bad for business. No, it is a win-win. It's good for humans and good for business. When we train algorithms for mobility, to move a person from A to B under a threshold of carbon footprint and with a specific time for punctuality, and you get better outcome, better revenue for that, then those algorithms will optimize for that. Same for healthcare, same for every sector. And that is, I feel, the puzzle is missing. So one part, private sector, they need to change the business model. When I was part of the ethical higher level expert group in Europe discussing about the ethical guidelines back in 2018, I said we should not regulate AI, we should regulate the business models, because that is how we change everything. Number 2, even if we, as government, we cannot change the business models of companies, but we can put our standards. We can introduce the same outcome-based systems. We can have a baseline. This is the baseline. If you don't perform well, example, mobility, as a taxi driver, if you bring a person from A to B, but you don't bring it within the time, not below the CO2 threshold, this is the baseline. But we fund as government if you meet the outcomes of CO2, of punctuality, and that is how you change, you bring change. And final point, why this is good for business. I was born in '83. World population was 4.8. We are 8 billion today. In 2050, the population size will plateau. The economy will no longer be an equation of population size. It will be an equation of quality, of premium, of what is better outcome. So making that change early, as companies, as governments, to move our equation of the economy to outcomes and give the relevant jobs to humans from early on, and don't allow technology that hurts that equation. I think it's the way we need to go. And it's not an easy path, but it's a leadership choice.
No, it's not an easy path. And I'm just going back again to the mental health question about how, if there is hope that is communicated and the technology that we apply, even for things like the gig economy, outcome-based results, et cetera, surely this will have a positive impact on the mental health of the people involved. You talked earlier, I skipped your question, about the mental health of students and how you work on this. I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about what you have seen at university and how students respond to their lack of, or whether the AI has led to distance and lack of connection, or you have been able to overcome that. To give you some background, it's because I was speaking to a young woman earlier, well, last week, who was saying that I'm concerned about my own brain because I feel that I'm becoming more stupid. My teachers are encouraging me to use AI, but I need to have some things to grapple with. Otherwise, I feel, empty. So how do you respond to that?
Thank you for that. Our professors from the social sciences, arts, and humanities would love you, because so in a liberal arts, in any major in a liberal arts tradition, about 1/3 of the curriculum is in social sciences, arts, and humanities. And so the reason I said what I have just said is because constantly on campus, we have about 1/3 of professors who say the very thing that you're saying. And as a result, we are led always to keeping in mind the balance. It's like having a fitness function in genetic algorithms terms. A fitness function that is not just outcome-based, but that has the rest, and it becomes a more comprehensive outcome-based equation, and that we're going towards. But maybe to try and address your question more specifically. So when I said earlier that we were struck by the tripling of our students who needed counseling right after COVID, and we are on the American model, so we keep going back to see what the American universities have done. What they were doing was purely based on the ratio of number of psychological counselors or number of students to psychological counselors. And that's just not scalable for us, especially with the purchasing power of Moroccans, right? But we had no choice. So what we did is we tried to come up with a comprehensive strategy that had counseling in it. We went from 5 to 6 weeks of a waiting list to about 24 hours of a waiting list over about 1 year. But then we were able to go back and speak not to the well-being of students on campus, but to what our purpose was, which was how can we equip students so that by the time of graduation, they have been equipped to lead fulfilled lives, right? So what we needed to do is first be able to measure what makes a fulfilled life, okay? So about 2 years ago, we found measures out of Harvard and UPenn, which we have adopted. So for 2 years now, we have been measuring for every student who enrolls, we measure their flourishing. They call it flourishing. We measure their flourishing, and every student graduating, we measure their flourishing. The advantage of doing this is we can compare to other universities. Okay, so this is good. Now we're measuring. So how do we impact? What we've decided to do is really based on 2 principles. One is work on the humanness. The assumption here is that if we increase humanness, flourishing increases. And I will tell you in just a little bit what we've done and why. And the other thing is working on the interaction, that there is interaction. So we have 4 levers that we've been working with. We only have 2 years of data, but comparing to others, we seem to be onto something. But we'll only be able to say in about 3 years when the students we started with graduate. So what are we working with? We're working on purposefulness and ethical leadership. So for about 3 years now, we've been working on human-centered design out of Stanford in order for every student to work with them on their own purposefulness using human-centered design. 1. 2, working on how do you develop what Harvard calls meaningful relationships you know, this longest longitudinal study about what makes a good life. It's having these meaningful relationships. So that's the second one. The third one is, and let me say it in Moroccan, the assumption about this is that كيقولوا لي تلف يشد الأرض. على ما باين زولنا الأرض لهاد لا جينيراسيون. So whoever gets lost needs to get grounded. But it looks like this generation, we have taken away the ground from them. Because education at home, higher percentages of parents are no longer educating, either because they don't have time, or if they have time, they decide to become friends with their children, not educators of their children. Instructors, best case scenario, they're good teachers, but very few of us know instructors in our mass system who are into education. Neighborhoods, the neighbor used to be an educator for us. They are no longer, there is remoteness between neighbors. And the last thing is that our students, at least, when we meet with them, they spend 40 to 60% of their time on social media, or at least on their smartphone, which means they are in relationship to a culture that is different from the culture they see here and from the culture of their parents. So our third lever is cultural anchoring. The idea is, how do we reintroduce a ground to someone? When they get lost, they can go back to that.
On that point, I'm going to go back to Aawatif, because the work that you do with smart cities, to me, there's a direct linkage between the cultural aspect, the grounding aspect, and what is possible with a smart city. And I'd like you to speak to that a little bit. How could these smart cities be more inclusive for all Moroccan citizens? What can we do to bring all Moroccans into this new world without causing undue stress, but encouraging curiosity and an openness and a willingness to collaborate, to learn, which we have heard is necessary for the future, but also for well-being and human agency?
Yes, thank you. I said before that how AI and Frugal AI can focus on local challenges and address problems of social inclusion, of education, of health. So to solve these problems, we need local solutions and design models that are suitable for this solution. So we need not complex algorithms or complex models. Maybe we need to go to small language models, distributed models that will be low power consumption and will be more suitable for local challenges. We are not addressing global challenges, we are addressing local challenges. So that, and we can work on human empowerment. I already talked about that. So human empowerment will help us to invest in the wealth of Morocco is human capital. We see this with the football, with mathematics, with human capital is the wealth of Morocco. And I want to switch quickly to the global or some important, if I can have the last slide, please, issues, which is about I talked about frugal AI. I want to talk now about social AI. So in the future of AI, we heard this morning that we will become maybe slaves of AI or kids of our mother AI. I think that we need to go a hybrid approach, which will connect AI performance with the human intuition, human creativity, develop creativity in students, in people, in everybody, that with connecting AI performance with human intuition, with human creativity, with the connectivity of the physical world, with all this connected infrastructure, will create like a hybrid intelligence that will serve the humanity. If we don't act now by designing models that incorporate or by design humanity we don't know what we will have in the future. So this is this is like a model that I am pushing, which I call it social AI. Social AI, it's not about only inclusive AI, about having a social component and humanity component in the AI models. So that we were talking this morning about ethics. If we have this cyber, physical, social system, it will by design take a decision in favor of humanity and not in favor of only performance or efficiency, etc. And we will maybe become slaves of AI. So we need now to develop it, to engage universities, mathematicians, PhD students, to work on AI models that incorporate by design this social component so that we can have this hybrid, AI will learn from human, with human, to create this global intelligence which will be serving humanity.
Thank you. So how do we do that, Vida? What tools do you think that we need access to? What's the simplest way for anyone who's been inspired now to go on and create these AI tools in Morocco? I'd like you to speak to that if you can.
I don't think, oh, this is working, it's fine. So I just want to, because we're talking about creativity and intuition, and these words resonate very much with me, I want to start by saying that AI does not replace human judgment at this stage in time. It's not replacing your capacity to judge things and to make good calls. It's just that as you are rushing through your day, and as you are thinking into so many things, sometimes you just need to do a reality check. Am I taking the right decision? Before like rushing into deadlines, emails, finishing all your work, just having this checking, am I thinking in the correct way, and how can I fine-tune my thinking further? This is where you can go to what I mentioned before, which is evidence. So for whether you're a researcher, policymaker, a university professor, you can access at least these data sets in two ways. There's an open access, that the 200 data sets that I mentioned, that you can access through I believe it's called the Humanitarian Data Exchange. So that's a good reference to make sure that you're making a good call in your judgments. And the other one, there's a different type of data sets. It's more closed data sets that require specific agreements to give you access. But in general, I would say, I would go to these resources just to check if my intuition, was I right with that idea, or I am being creative, but am I also being efficient? And these are just tools that are at your fingertips. So I will just end at this note and say, it's just on your fingertips. You just have to go there and use it. Not to replace your intuition, not to replace your creativity, just to check the efficiency, check if you are thinking realistically and if you are in touch with reality or just doing what you just want to do. Just a small judgment check.
Thank you very much. And this brings us to the close of the third panel on time, I have to say. So I'm very happy about that. I think that there's a lot of benefit in having one-on-one questions. We can mix and mingle after the event, because you may have questions. It's easier to ask when you're speaking, face-to-face with someone rather than this whole audience. But just to wrap up, we've heard today from Cornelia talking about the importance of human agency, from Aawatif that society must be at the center, it has to be pro-social, and then from Loubna we have to reimagine work and truth. The truth is essential. It's the core of how we interact with each other. And Amine, we have an education to protect the minds and also to encourage learning, but critical thinking as well, and prepare for new skills. And from Vida, Meta, our co-host for the event today, the tools exist. The tools exist. Access must be open and inclusive. So with those words, I would like to thank everyone for your attention today. Wish you a good evening.